Good morning, everyone. I'm your host, Ryan Angot, here with the Delegate to Innovate podcast, Season 1, Chapter 3. So honored to have my friend, my attorney, which those usually don't go hand in hand, John Mashni with us, and my favorite children's book author. John, welcome to the
Hey,
podcast.
it's amazing to be. I love it. I'm so excited to chat with you.
This is fun. I'm just getting this podcast off the ground, and this is probably the the most easy interview I think I can have because you've got so much range and stuff to talk about. So the audience knows John and I have known each other for a couple of years. He's what you call a visionary entrepreneur, but also a lawyer. He writes children's books. He just started a new sort of innovative law firm that has a different style of the way they do law. So very interesting character background. And John, I just want to talk a little bit more about that. I mean, I think the big question everyone asks, and you've probably done a bunch of podcasts, how do you go from being an attorney to writing children's books? In my personal, and I'm framing you up, my personal story, I have my kids, and Isabel's 5. I was selected to speak about 2 weeks ago to an audience, or to the audience, to a bunch of kindergartners.
It's an
And I
audience.
chose the book Cinder Toot, which is a play on Cinderella, so the audience knows, but it's not about finding the glass slipper. It's about finding whose toot smelled like Cinderella's. They had to chase her down. So,
Right.
we may think that's a little, immature from an adult standpoint. My kids, my daughter, and their friends were like, this was the favorite book of the year. They were rolling laughing. The teacher approved it. She was like, good job. So good job for that. I was a firsthand witness, not to just my kid, but 20 other kindergartners think it was the funniest thing in the world. So you did something right there with that one, brother. So tell me how
Yeah.
you went from attorney to bridging into something creative that's extremely unique and different.
So I love that question, opening question. I'll just say this. I think there's a lot that goes into it. I have always loved telling stories. I went to film school in New York many years ago. And so I'd always tried to incorporate it into what I do. And I've always just loved telling stories, whether it's movies, books, anything like that. And I've been a writer for a long time, but never really wrote much since I went to law school and became a lawyer. You just have no time to do that stuff. And I was actually writing about a different topic. And a friend said, John, you're never going to finish this book that you're writing. You got to publish something next year. And it was 2019. And then it just so happened I would tell my kids bedtime stories. I got 4 kids. And their favorite bedtime story was actually this story of Cinderella, who instead of losing her slipper, she toots. And then the prince has to find his true love by, asking all the maidens to pass gas. And that was Cinder Toot. And so they wanted to hear that story every night. Well, I never thought anyone in the world would know, that story other than my own kids. It was just like a bedtime story until my kids told one of my best friends when he came over. And I was so embarrassed initially. I was like,
Sure.
no, kids, like this, no one is supposed to know this. But he believed in it. He's like, John, you got to get this out. This is hilarious. And we did. And I don't write children's books to be a children's book author. I actually thought they were stupid, to be honest. When I was a dad initially, I thought all these books are so simple. Anyone could write one of these, right? It's like the blurb on the back is longer than the actual book, right? I just didn't think they were that creative. But my wife basically said, and she gave me one that was brilliant, which is called The Legend of Rock, Paper, Scissors, which I don't throw out book recommendations for children's books often, but that book is incredible. And it just convinced me like I could do it. And then I wanted to do something with my kids because I'm busy working all the time. I just thought, what if I wrote a children's book and did it with my kids and incorporated them into the whole process and taught them how to start a business, taught them how to be an entrepreneur, taught them how to make money, and did it through this silly story. And it worked. And we had so much fun. And it turned into something. We wrote another book, Children of Cinder Toot, the sequel. We wrote a book called Santa Toot. And then we just came out this past year with Rapunzel, which is not a toot book, but still really funny about body hair. And it's the Rapunzel story, except it's a man in the tower who has body hair everywhere. And we have 4 more books written. I got about 10 more books that are in the process of being written. And so it just turned into, this is something I do with my kids. And it's
Cool.
honestly so fun. I just think it's so fun. And you know, I'll just say this and then we can talk about something else. But I just, the first comment that I got back before it was published, a really good friend who has 5 kids, he said, "Thank you for giving me 30 minutes of joy with my kids." Because he said he read it to them and they just laughed for half an hour. And I just thought, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard. Like, I don't sell books. I sell about 30 minutes of joy with a child. And I say sometimes the child's optional. So that's the source of it.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting because, this is obviously more of a business podcast and entrepreneurs are, usually money motivated. It didn't sound like money was the motivator for this endeavor.
No. In fact, I always joke everyone has made more money than me on these books, right? Like the illustrator, the editor, we give a percentage away to charities. They've all made more money, but I think I get the most out of it, And the other thing is we have made our money back, right? And what I taught the kids was, hey, is this one book? Are we going to do sequels? Like, you guys are going to take this over one day. So why don't we brainstorm? Like, what's the next step? How big do you want to make it? And they were like, Dad, let's come up with a series. Dad, here's our other books. Here's this, here's that. Dad, how do we do ads? Dad, let's make a YouTube video. Like, my kids are coming up with the marketing strategies
for
the books. So that's what's super cool.
That's awesome. That's like a life free education, before college about like what a real little business is. And if you want to like grow it and work on it together, I love that. That's so cool that, you're able to do that. And if it takes off and they like it and it develops, maybe it could be a little cash cow for the family down the road and something you guys could do together. That's really cool.
Yeah,
How long on average? I think a lot of people are curious now. Probably most of our audience has kids, if you do, they're either little or they've been little.
Yeah.
I didn't really see the value in kids' books until I had kids. And like every night I read Isabel or Emerson, a 5 to 15-minute book. And, how long did it take to create a children's book all in? Is that like 3 months, 6 months?
Yeah,
I mean, hour-wise, do you have a gauge for it?
Here, and so I think too, this will be really helpful for a lot of people because part of why I wrote the children's books, it wasn't just for the reasons I told you with the kids. In my world, I'm always representing entrepreneurs and working with creative people, working with founders. And what I thought to myself was, well, I'm just going to take the advice that I give all of my clients. And I'm going to go from being maybe opposite side of the table from them and sit on the same side and say, well, look, I'm just going to use all the things I've learned and do it myself. Because like sometimes you have a lawyer or an advisor and you're like, I bet you have thought, well, they don't really know what it's like, right? Or they don't, have they ever done this, right?
They walked in my shoes.
Exactly right. Yeah. So what I said was, hey, if I were talking to myself as an entrepreneur or a business owner, how would I do it? Because that to me was, I was already busy, right? Like if I, like there's lots of ways to write books and write children's books and all that stuff, but I was already busy. So I said, well, here's what advice I would say to myself. Build a team of people, figure out the steps you can do. And then every other step, find a really good person or a great person that can fill that role. And so that's what I did. So honestly, it took me about a week to write the first draft of Cinder Toot. That's it. And then I reached out to someone who I knew who had actually written a book called How to Self-Publish Your Children's Book. And I was in an online course with her a couple of years prior. And she said, let me hook you up. And she literally had a call with her and she just went step by step. I took her course and she just completely just changed how I thought about it. She said, you got to hire an editor. Like, and it blew my mind. Like I wrote, 1,000 words. Why do I need to hire an editor? Right. She's like, no. Hire an editor, hire a layout person. If you're not gonna do the illustrations, hire that person. So all in all, it probably took about 3 months to get it edited, right? There's 15 different drafts of Cinder Toot. So if you saw the first version, it wouldn't even look like the same story. I mean, the plot is basically the same, but it completely changed. So it took about 3 months of going back and forth on editing. It took about 4 months to going back and forth on illustration. So with me, it took, I would say, about a week's worth of writing for about 15 minutes a day. And I actually wrote a whole article, how to write a children's book in 15 minutes a day, right?
Wow. That's cool.
to share like how I did it, because I didn't do all of it. I just did the stuff I could do. And I think that ties into what you're saying with Delegate and Innovate, right? Like
Yeah.
I just did the parts that only I could do. Like it was my
Yeah.
story, right? Like no
Yeah.
one else could write the story that I wrote.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I didn't do any of the illustration. I didn't edit it. By the way, my editor is incredible. Her name's Brooke.
Yeah.
She used to edit books for Disney books. Like she's incredible. She made the story so much better. Same thing
Yeah.
with the illustrator. Kate did a phenomenal job. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's all about, to me, like not necessarily how much time I put in. It's like, how do I get step one done and off my
Yeah.
plate and get it out to the team? And then the team goes and runs everything else. And it's like,
Yeah.
it only takes me 15 minutes a day, but that 15 minutes over a short period of time turns into right now 4 published books, 8 total are written, and I got literally 10 plus more that are just the ideas there. I just got to sit down and write it.
Yeah. That's great. Delegate to innovate. You can't do it all. And now,
Right.
so the audience knows John has used some of our virtual assistant services. Did they help you with some of that? Any of
Yeah.
the book work? Was that before your
Yeah,
time?
mainly on the marketing, right? So I had an assistant doing my Amazon ads, right? So after the fact, I had an assistant create, if you know what the people know the term, the A plus content on Amazon, you can
Yeah.
add content to the listing. So I
Yeah.
had somebody, I literally just sent some samples, sent some
Yeah.
videos, and then she turned it into the A plus listing. It was cool. I had her capture all the reviews, the book reviews.
Yeah.
And I
Right.
haven't done it yet, but I had this idea. What if I just post all the 1-star reviews? Because I think it'd be the funniest thing. Like people, like, you know, some people who don't have the same sense of humor that I have
Sure.
wrote
Sure.
1-star reviews. So I thought it'd be fun. But look, maybe I'll do it. Maybe not. We'll see how.
That's a question that's going to help. So we're launching a new computer accessory brand, Tech
Yeah.
Lock, that's just going live on Amazon. I mean, I just literally hung up the phone with my Amazon consultant, and it's all about reviews and your online brand presence. Do you have a few 1-star reviews?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So how do you handle, because now that I'm like casting to the world, hey, we're Tech Lock, we got these cool gadgets. And some people, you get trolls and haters, and they just happen. And like I sometimes get personally pissed off. How do you temper that?
Right.
Like, what do you mean you gave me a 1-star review? Like,
Yeah.
what? The book's great,
Yeah, they didn't even read the instructions. It's like it's right there.
Yeah.
It's on the box, right?
Sure.
Man, that's such a good question, Ryan. I think so. I actually I have this come up in legal situations too. People say like, John, can you take down that 1-star review, or can you take down the Yelp review or Google review, right? Like, and I always go back to the same thing. Like when you're looking at stuff online, whether it's a review or a comment or whatever, it's like, don't worry about if it's the negative lies. You only got to worry about the negative truths, right? So if someone's
Sure.
saying something bad, you got to assess, like, is this true or not? You know, for me, when it came down to book reviews and 1-star, I read it and they're just like, it's not funny, or this is like, I mean, they say it in a much more mean way, right?
Yeah.
But
Right.
but actually, and this goes to even some marketing advice for people. There's 2 books that I read before I decided to write this book that really informed so much of how I went about writing and marketing Cinder Toot. Like I had so many other book ideas first, but I specifically chose Cinder Toot for one main reason. When you hear it, when I tell you the 30-second pitch, like Cinderella, clock strikes midnight, she leaves the ball, she's running, she loses her slipper, picks it up, as she's bending over, she toots, right? And then all the prince has is the smell of her toot. I guarantee you, there's only 2 reactions. You smile, like you're like kind of smirking right now, right? It's kind of funny. People laugh immediately, or they think you're disgusting. They are gross. They're just like, you're crazy. But intentionally divides people. They have immediate strong reaction to my pitch, to the story. And that's intentional. Like my favorite story that I have is a tribute to my wife. It's called The Fork Who Loved a Spoon. And it's the story of Romeo and Juliet, but with forks and spoons. And I say a happy ending. That's my favorite story. Okay. But it doesn't divide people like Cinder Toot. So I started with a book where I knew it would divide people and they would have a strong reaction, because when they hear it and they read it, and then they, just like you had that reaction, right? Where you go in the class and the kids laugh. They love it, right?
Oh yeah.
You're going to
Yeah.
go tell people about it. And it's that whole idea of the sneeze factor, right? Or if you look at one of the books, the two books I read were Growth Hacker Marketing by Ryan Holiday and also Perennial Seller by Ryan Holiday. And he talks about how do you make something that lasts? How do you make something that markets itself, right? And that's what I tried to do with Cinder Toot. So I actually anticipated getting some people who just don't have the same sense of humor that I have. And I actually had some ideas about and some thoughts early on. Is my law firm going to fire me for writing a fart book? Like are my clients going to fire me? And finally, somebody said, John, if a client is going to not work with you because you wrote a fart book, like
they're not the right fit.
maybe you shouldn't work with them. Like so I look for those reviews and I kind of want to share them as a marketing tactic to say, hey, this person doesn't like my book. And let me give you an example, if that's okay. I read the story about Elvis and how look, I like Elvis Presley, but am I the biggest Elvis fan? No. But people love Elvis or they hate Elvis. And so much so that, right, if you've ever seen these I hate Elvis bumper stickers and paraphernalia, swag, it's all over the place. But I read this great story about who actually sells the I hate Elvis paraphernalia. Elvis.
Are you serious? Like his foundation?
Yeah, his manager came up with the idea, how do we monetize our haters? And so that stuck with me so much because you gotta understand, like, no matter what you sell, no matter what you do, somebody is not gonna like it. So then the next step is, okay, anticipate that. And then how do I monetize that? How do I use that to my benefit? Maybe you can't directly monetize, but Elvis selling I hate Elvis merch is like the greatest story. I mean, I just love it. So much so that I started a website, I hate lawyers. I hate my.lawyer. We have a website. We do that. My partner Michael and I, we started it. We just make fun of lawyers, right?
Right.
So I say with the negative reviews, I think it's just part of being in business. But I think the key is you got to have enough positive to outweigh the negative. And if you build a good enough product and you take care of people, those people are going to outweigh and really like swamp and cover up all the negative ones.
Yeah. No, the Jovial Judge, I know, is your brand. We can get into the next topic because a brand you started kind of off that Elvis thought, and that's crazy. I didn't know that the Elvis business, I'm sure it's some foundation or God,
I have no idea how it's organized.
Who knows? But for them to start a I Hate Elvis is pretty innovative in itself, and it like maybe I wonder if Elvis was around he would care or not, but maybe not. That's kind of a unique circumstance. So you started a Jovial Judge. That's a brand. I got your hat. I did a little podcast. I don't know if we launched it or not. One of my little video clips, but going to your range, John. This is a new brand that you said like this is kind of poking fun at the industry. Tell me a little bit more how you got into that.
Essentially, I think I'm around lawyers almost all day, right? Talking to lawyers, whether they're in my firm or they're opposing counsel. And, I like lawyers like most of the time, but sometimes, let's just be honest, you just hate lawyers, right? Like, I don't know, I can say it, like, we're just annoying sometimes, right? Like, I'm a lawyer. I don't even like lawyers that much. So we just thought, well, how do we turn that on its head? Like, if we make fun of something, then I think we get, if it takes some of the sting out of it, right? It makes it where it's okay. Let's joke about what makes lawyers unique or silly or not like very much. And so it turned into, well, let's just poke fun at lawyers. So like the non-lawyers, they're trying to make jokes about us, but let's be funnier than them, right? Let's show our sense of humor. Let's do it better than them. And actually, we built a whole website with the help of one of your VAs. She literally built the whole thing for us. We just gave her an idea, set up an account. We told her what we wanted, set up the print on demand, and we got a website in less than a month from nothing, where we just had somebody build it for us. So that was really cool. The idea being that we wanted to poke fun at ourselves in a way where we show that we're not above not just being criticized, but poking fun of ourselves and making fun of ourselves. And honestly, I like to laugh. If it's funny, I love it. Let's joke about stuff that's funny. Like, it's okay, right? My favorite shirt is the one that says, my attorney is cool on the front, and then on the back says, said no one ever. Right. And it's just
Sure.
funny. I'm like, I got like 10 of those shirts. I love them.
Yeah, but it's not accurate, John, because I see you're cool. And you're just
You're just going with the
contradicts
kids,
yourself.
man. Going with
And I've worked with a lot of attorneys. It's great to work with you. You're one of a kind, truly. I genuinely mean that. So other entrepreneurs out there, if you need a great visionary attorney, John, I don't, you probably don't have any bandwidth to take on any new clients, but maybe you do. But the attorney thing, I have a patent attorney that does all of our patents, and I think there's so much heartburn with legal. I'd equate it to like, as you're running a business, we have trademarks and patents and international patent, all this patent maintenance. I just get a bill every month for a couple grand. I'm like, oh, here we go. It's almost like getting a car repair. You can't really see, there's nothing worse than you got to put $2,000 into your car. And it's not like you're fixing an exterior blemish. It's like the engine Johnson rod that snapped. Oh, all right, I need a new Johnson rod, as a quote and a phrase out of Seinfeld. And when you get these attorney bills, it's hard to see what's the value output. There is value, and we need a great patent attorney, and we need, but I just get, it's patent maintenance to keep your patent up to date in India or China. Like, there's value, but it's hard to see. And I think that's inherently part of the challenge with.
Well, let me say too. I mean, I think it's funny you bring that up. Like that's the struggle I have too, just of how do I add value, right? As an advisor. And I think part of what separates me, I try to make it, something that separates me is I care about the person. I care about the company. I want to know what's going on. Like fill me in, right? And I think everything comes from how do you add value, and everything else, that's the starting point, right? Because when people feel like they're getting value, I feel like they will pay. Like, hey, this was worth it, right? And so to me, it's like all about being relational and not just transactional. Like, hey, let's have a discussion. Tell me what's going on. How can I help? Let's jump in. Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's get, let's do some work. So I think it's a really good point you're making. A lot of times, if you don't understand, if you don't have that relationship, if it's just an email and a bill, it's really hard. It's hard on me too, frankly. I cherish when I have a relationship with the founder or the creative team or the leadership team or the artist, whoever it may be that I'm helping. That's fun. That's where it's like I get vested and I get excited. And I feel like then my brain says, oh, how can I contribute more? How can I add value more?
Sure. When you have the relationship, it allows you to go deeper than just like, I need you to review this contract. Well, let's take a step back. Like, what's the end goal? Like, what else are we trying to do, and allow you to think creatively? And that's one of your differentiators. That's awesome. We've got about 8 minutes left. Why don't you give me a quick rundown of the next venture? You just changed firms. That's public information now.
Yep.
And tell me more about going from A to B and why, and your grandiose vision for this next journey.
So really started a brand new law firm that is, the goal is to serve clients better, but also help attorneys really live the life that they want. And, I know you and I are both familiar with like EOS. We always say, is it possible for an attorney to live the EOS life? And if you would have asked me 2-3 years ago, I probably would have said it's impossible. You can't do it as an attorney. You just can't. You have to not be an attorney. And so
because why?
Because you're always going to be doing the work in the business. You could never be outside the business. And you're always going to be in a system or a structure where you just have to work and never stop.
Billable hours. It's just always billable hours.
You got to always be on call. You got to always respond to emails. You got to always be on. You can never be off, right? And so that's a couple of years ago, I met a guy named Michael Melfi, who's my partner now. And we both are very entrepreneurial people generally. And I would say I'm probably like half entrepreneur, half attorney. He's like 99% entrepreneur and, half attorney, half golfer, half percent golfer, right? So like maybe it's more like 50% golfer, 49% entrepreneur, 1% attorney. But we really hit it off, and we started to talk about this and get ideas. And we teamed up at our prior firm, and we started to really try to say, hey, could we run a business process, business system as lawyers? So we started building teams, we started building processes, we started to get technology. And then that just led to us saying, we really got to be in control of what we're doing. We had some restraints. We had a really good law firm behind us, but it's like we needed to be in control 100%. And so that led us to building what we are now calling Mavisy. And just the fact, here's an idea too, just to plant the seed. We didn't want to name it ourselves, like after ourselves. We just felt like we want to think like a tech company or like a hot, cool startup. And that's where we practice. We both work with tons of startups. So we said, well, would a startup ever call itself the owner's names? Like, how come you didn't call, TechLock, Angot, right? Angot Lock or something, right? It probably wouldn't make sense, right? I mean, maybe you'll change it and, you'll call me afterwards and be like, we got to change the name. But the reality is that's how we think. We want to think like cutting edge. And to us, it's about the people. We want to build a brand. If it's really not about us, it's about helping other people live the life that they want, then we can't call the firm, name it after us. And that's just one example of how we're trying to be different. I mean, that's the tip of the iceberg, I think. But really, it's designing opportunities for attorneys that want to live the life they want and not kill themselves to do it. That's the gist. And again, we're still representing the same clients. I'm doing the same work. We're really startup, entrepreneur, business owner focused, working with creative people, working with people that want a relationship. They can just reach out, get advice. But we're also building teams. We're building teams of people so we can provide excellent legal service, high touch, high end, and still not lose ourselves in the process.
What would you say your firm's sweet spot is, like in terms of what type of service? And this is really for businesses and entrepreneurs, founders, heavy startup, but it could be an established business too. Absolutely. Like, what's your sweet spot?
Yeah, I think for us, they have to fit into our core values. And then we're designed to be a general purpose firm, right? So you come in, we can be outside general counsel. So if you're a firm that's looking for saying like, hey, we're not going to bring someone in-house, not yet, or it doesn't make sense, or we have someone in-house, but we need kind of outside general counsel as well. We're designed where we can help a business, whether it's just general corporate, buying and selling, intellectual property, employment, real estate, all the things that are related to the services that a business needs, even litigation, right? Commercial litigation, we can help. Going outside the country, we can help. We have resources, we can point you in the right direction. So that's really, if you were to say, what's the sweet spot? It's someone that's looking for outside general counsel services, whether you're established or even startups, doing lots of stuff with startups. In a startup, you got to start right. Otherwise, you're going to, 1 degree off at the beginning leads to being really off at the end.
Yeah, well said. And I've seen it firsthand. You carve the wrong deal, allow the wrong term, and you're small now. It might not have an impact, but in 3, 4, 5 years, you want to liquidate the business, exit, or whatever. I mean, we've worked on some pretty heavy gauge contracts that it's heavy gauge, and you got to know what you're doing, which you guys do. So that's awesome. Well, thank you for the insight on the business. We're going to do a quick lightning round.
Let's do it.
I'm going to ask you some fun, maybe risque questions, John, because that's my sweet spot.
Love it. I mean, I write fart books, Ryan, so.
That's true. All right. If you could travel back in time, where would you go?
Oh my God.
And why?
This is maybe sappy, but I would just go hang out with my grandparents more. They passed away. That was awesome. So I have such great memories.
I would say that's a good answer. And I was thinking when I asked it, I might be do something similar. I'm not a big history buff, so I don't need to go back to when Lincoln was shot. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Best vacation spot, number 1.
Wow. Honestly, all right, it depends.
If you don't say my place at Shanty Creek, it's okay.
I'd love to go there with no kids, to be honest.
It's a lot of fun.
So I would say I love to go someplace in the South with my wife if I'm going someplace. So, southern states, beautiful, Tennessee, Bolt Tree Farmhouse, went there with my wife. It was incredible. You're sitting on top
of that at? Bolt Tree Farmhouse?
Yeah, right outside Chattanooga, about an hour outside Chattanooga. Wow. And you're in like a geodesic dome that's clear. There's a hot tub, there's a grill, and you're just looking out over the mountain. It's pretty awesome.
That's like one of your top. That's awesome. And it's stateside, which is convenient.
Yeah.
I need to do more of that. I've traveled a lot internationally, but I haven't seen like I didn't even know like that exists and where in the U.S. So I might hit you up on that.
Oh, great spot. Yeah.
Last question. What is the most unusual job you've ever done? And you can't say writing kids' books.
So I mean, unusual. Gosh, I've done some weird stuff. I worked in a skin cancer lab for a while, which was crazy, which I thought would be the most coolest, interesting job, but it ended up being the most boring job I had. So I don't know if but it's like, it sounds really cool, but eventually I would just drop purple dots of liquid into these Petri dishes and then count them the next day and how many popped up. So it was cool. I had to go security. You feel like you're going into like, top secret, underground secret lab or something. And then all of a sudden you're in this like all white room and you're just sitting there by yourself counting purple dots. And you're like, what am I doing with my life? So
yeah, it sounds, but hey, you're helping better humanity trying to solve skin cancer problems.
That's right.
Would you do that in like college or?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. College job.
Yeah.
Right all right. Well, I think that's good on the lightning. We have a little depth of who John Mashni is. Thank you, John. Really appreciate you coming on the show today. And if everybody's out there that's looking to get in touch with John, if there's interest in having a visionary attorney with a lot of range, fart books to contract negotiation and being a pit bull in your camp, John's the guy for you. So, John, if people want to get a hold of you, what would be the best way?
Yeah, easiest way, just go to johnmashni.com. There's a contact button. You can reach out, tell me what you're looking for, and would love to connect. JOHNMASHNI.com.
Great. Well, thank you, brother, for being on the show. That's a wrap.
Love it.
Delegate,
Thanks, Ryan.
Innovate.